Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello, this is Deborah Johnson with you today with the Women at Halftime podcast. And our focus is usually for those who are at mid-career, at the halftime of life, really answering the question, what next? And the process I'm going to talk to you about today is a very important one in discovering the answer to that question, that it will help you work through it. And it's called Ever Wonder What to Write? And it's the writing process. And I wanted to write a little bit on journalism or journaling in my podcast. I wanted to speak a little bit on this. And it's the process of how I even write books. And if you followed any of what I do, of course, I have a number of books, a couple that I'm really putting out now before you is, of course, The Summit, which is an allegory. It's a story within a story. Women at Halftime, talking about getting to our hero mountain, and Bad Code, really talking about our mindsets and about how they can be hacked. I have a brand new book coming out called Stop Circling on escaping those endless roundabouts. And so a part of this writing process that I'm talking about today is exactly what I go through in even creating some of my books. So I think it will be, if you hang on with me, I have some points here that will hopefully help you understand part of my process. And I hope you enjoy part of that process as well. So here we go. Ever wonder what to write? The writing process. Well, if you ever question yourself on what to write, I suggest you start journaling. And before you really tune this completely out and tune me out, words and musings, they don't need to be elaborate or even eloquent. But just putting those thoughts and feelings on a page, it starts the writing process. And I've been encouraged to write my thoughts down through the years, even since my high school years. And uncovering some of my writings is revealing to me in many ways. And at this point, I'm wondering if our kids will ever take the time to read any of my sketched out thoughts. But there are actually some entries I hope they don't read, but I've kept many of my writings and my personal journal books. They're just kind of stacked up and I forget about them sometime. And recently, when cleaning out a cabinet, I ran across a small notebook that I had penned 10 years ago. And I almost tossed it. I was cleaning. I was trying to clean my files at this time of year. But I'm glad I didn't. And it was interesting to find that I was facing some of the same feelings today as I was back then, 10 years ago. And I was addressing my awareness of change in the market and of changes in my career. And I also found written out prayers for our sons and their futures, as well as my personal feelings of inadequacy, which were unfounded in many ways, but they were still honest feelings. And I was able to watch from reading the words on the page and the separate entries that I did, how I was able to personally work through many of the feelings that I had. And some of that process that I was applying to my life at that time, they've carried over to the systems I've created and implemented in my work to help others today. It's been very valuable. And reading back was amazing to me. It was kind of surprising, actually. Well, even if you've never spent time journaling, I'm going to cover 4 principles on what to write to spark your imagination. People ask me all the time, I'd like to be more creative. This is a way. And hopefully this will help you to move forward, not only in your ability to work through your feelings, but to move ahead in your life. And hopefully to get you out of endless roundabouts. So number one, write about who you are. It's a worthwhile exercise to write out your core values and what you absolutely stand for. Some of you may not know. It's a good thing to review. And it's also valuable to assess your strengths and affirm them. Now, there are many online programs that will help you identify your strengths, such as the DISC program or Strengths Finders. There's a lot of those. However, you don't always need an in-depth course to figure this out. If you spend some time writing out what you've done and some of your accomplishments, you will affirm some of the areas where you've either excelled or underperformed. And I've created the core common denominator for this as well. It's an easy way to go through and evaluate what you've done and what you excel at. Well, it's been fairly easy for me to identify my strengths in the music field. Because I'm classically trained as a concert pianist and vocalist, I've been able to see those strengths, but moving away from this intense focus classically took me to other types of venues and engagements, and not toward orchestral and classical concert halls in my performance. But the fact that I could also play by ear, compose, and sing and play together, it took my career to different areas of concentration in performing shows. And I've worked for years in the LA area because I'm a vocalist, pianist, and a woman. Now, though there are many other people who are more proficient in jazz, in film, and orchestral arranging, I have worked for many years using my personal strengths. Now, other areas have been more difficult for me to analyze. And with growth and exploration, those areas have become more apparent through the years. And this is where we can analyze what we're good at, and then we can hire out the rest. Well, evaluation becomes easier when the thoughts and the outcomes they're written out and assessed. You can see them right in front of you. Good editors and help with research and content will always be valuable hires for me as an author. And this has been very apparent as I've evaluated my personal strengths. But I also realize the value of my creative process and the follow through with my work. I can't hire that out. It's very unique. That creative element is very unique. So after this, in identifying your strengths, number 2, write about your feelings. Well, after reading Teresa de Grova's book, Mass Influence, which I've put that link in the article that goes with this, by the way, it's the phrase that I am not enough. It hit me hard. That phrase was going all the way throughout that book. And I wrote those words in an entry 10 years ago when I was expanding my career. I am not enough. I immediately could recall feeling those words. I am not enough in many areas of my life. And today, the phrase imposter syndrome is one we often hear. And feeling like a fake is a common occurrence in the arts, but I wasn't a fake. However, it was a feeling. And I found those feelings were unmistakably there as I expanded my career as a speaker and an author. It's the same. So how did I overcome those feelings? I am not enough. Well, I wrote them out. Writing out thoughts, no matter how muddled, negative, or confused, it helps to place some of that stress of those thoughts on the page. So I read on of my musings, and I found I started outlining my process of working myself out of a funk, out of a feeling that I was pushing an engine uphill. I could feel some of those same feelings of release as I read my words and the process I had gone through years ago. I had actually used some of the illustrations that I wrote about in my little journal, in my speaking engagements. I'd forgotten about those. So they were very valuable and very relatable. The affirmations of some of my work were also visible within the entries. I had confirmed the time, and I forgot about this too, the feelings I had, that I had just completed 42 videos for my online course, Change Your Life, Get Unstuck. I'm putting a link in this article for that course as well. It's a wonderful course. And after the 30th video, I had penned that I wondered what possessed me to do such a project. And I've continued to have those same feelings through many subsequent projects. And I really had to laugh because not much has changed in 10 years. I still start doing these huge projects and I complete them. And number 3, write about what you love. And this is part of my core common denominator as well, what you love. Even 10 years ago, my entries mention our family and prayers for our sons. And I've also penned words and principles of a deep faith, which has been a part of my life for many, many years. And those words come naturally because of my core values, and they're regularly on my mind. And it's why I've included a whole chapter in the appendix of my newest book, Stop Circling, on core values. Our core values create a strong foundation on which our purpose stands. There's so much talk about purpose today. Start with your core values. Rereading our entries can be extremely revealing. And I found there were themes mentioned multiple times, and it was affirming for me to realize I've continued to pursue what I love. And I've worked through many of my questioning thoughts. It took a while to completely verbalize my focus in my writing. And I didn't write pages and pages, but the words that were penned on the pages even 10 years ago provided insight for where I have arrived today. Now, I don't have time to read through all my journals, but this was very revealing to me. Well, let's move on to number 4, which I feel is a very important point in this process, is write about how you can help others. And what has changed since I penned those words years ago is that I've both consciously and subconsciously taken some of my feelings that I wrote and applied them to the products I continue to provide today. And in fact, reading through some of the entries were so very revealing and helpful. Now, I know my journal writings will continue to give me words to help others as I express them on the page. And they can be as rough as I want them on my pages. A huge takeaway for me was a feeling of gratefulness. And this is a trait missing for so many today. There's so much self-focus on my way, on the way I do things in today's world with selfies, social media influencers, and a world of so-called experts, that the honesty most of us feel day by day is lost. So that gratefulness and thankfulness that takes away that spotlight of self-focus and puts a spotlight on others to lift them up. And as we lift others up, we are encouraged, inspired, and motivated and buoyed in our own responses and our focus. Now, even though he was not the first to use the phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats, it's often attributed to former President John F. Kennedy when he in his 1963 speech. But it's a principle that's very visual. Boats rising up on a body of water is a wonderful visualization of a consequence of helping others. And we inadvertently, we help our own boat to rise. Now, whether intentional or not, it's a welcome and desired outcome. And that's why I've put in some of those words of helping others and an outward focus, some of that, and even an allegory in the book, The Summit. When I talk about the social media circus in this book, which is one of the places that our protagonist, Mallory, has to go through to be able to get to her summit and overcome, she's actually in a roundabout getting stuck there, where all the focus with that social media circus was all on inward. And she had to learn that there was more, that was an outward focus, and she had to get beyond all of that. And she had to keep her goal in mind. She couldn't forget about it. So in doing this, I urge you today to take the time. It doesn't need to be pretty. It can be any sort of notepad. It could be scraps of paper, but I like to keep things kind of together. Start writing down just a few of your thoughts. It could be a sentence or two. Just to start. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. There are a lot of journals out there that will help you go along with some thoughts, but really all you need is a pad of paper and just to start putting down your thoughts. And in how to write, you may never be an author putting out a book, but you might leave some words. You might leave some letters for those around you, some encouraging notes for those around you. One of the biggest comments that I get from others are like personal notes that I write. I've done this for years and years. I got in a habit. And it is the way I started DJ Works. Part of my music is, or part of my business is DJ Works Music. But DJ Works Media, DJ Works is pretty much the heart of it. And I started this back when I was in junior high school, writing notes to others. I would call it DJ Works. I was Deborah Jean then. Jean is my middle name, Debbie Jean. And it was DJ Works. That's what I call it. And it was before DJs were popular. But it was the outflow of those notes, of those little handmade cards. And that's a good reminder for me of how that writing can have influence with others and encouragement for others and outward focus. So I hope you have really enjoyed this today and are inspired. And as we are still toward the beginning of the year, at the first part of it, first quarter, as this comes out, that you will be inspired to put some of those new habits into place if they are not already in place. And it will encourage you in your journey of getting out of your roundabout. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter and you'll get the notes of the release of this book, of course, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Very easy to get to. You can reach me at other places. I take a certain number of live engagements, which I book throughout the year. Deborah Johnson speaker. You can see my videos, and I have a lot of material online. Of course, everybody loves the music, and that's DJ Works Music. Have a lot of music out there and musicals. So I hope you connect, and that you can connect with me on social media as well. And I'll look forward then to being with you the next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are the reason I am here, and I'll look forward to being with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.